Today will be the end of Israel's 24th parliament, which will end Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's year-long tenure. The dissolution of the Knesset will trigger Israel's fifth election in less than 4 years. Last week, Bennett moved to dissolve parliament after infighting made his ruling coalition no longer tenable. The Knesset set a deadline for Wednesday midnight, that's tonight, for a final vote to dissolve. Once the call for a snap election gets the final approval, Israel's foreign minister, Yair Lapid, will take over from Bennett as prime minister. Lapid will be overseeing a caretaker government with limited powers, while he will also keep the foreign minister portfolio. Elections will likely be held either on the 25th of October or the 1st of November. But even as lawmakers are grappling over the exact election date, the campaign has already become dominated by the possible comeback of former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu's record reign was ended by Lapid and Bennett a year ago when they formed a rare alliance. Now, with the collapse of the diverse coalition, opposition leader Netanyahu has been again in the spotlight. Despite being on trial for corruption, Netanyahu hopes to win a sixth term in office. Surveys have shown his right-wing Likud party leading, but still short of a governing majority. The anti-Netanyahu camp will likely be led by Lapid, who has sought to cast Netanyahu's potential return to office as a national threat. Meanwhile, Naftali Bennett will stay as the alternate prime minister, as steps to revive the stalled talks on Tehran's nuclear program are on. Bennett will be responsible for Iran policy. Israel opposes a restoration of the 2015 agreement, under which Iran was given sanctions relief in exchange for checks on its nuclear program. Now, for more details on this, our correspondent Jody Cohen is joining us from the Knesset premises in Jerusalem. Hello to you, Jody. What is the latest on the progress of the dissolution of the bill?
Hi, Alison. Well, as you said, I'm inside the Knesset, isn't it? As you can see, it's quite quiet at the moment. The plenum is actually in session just along the corridor behind me. I've been speaking to some of the members of the Knesset, the parliamentarians this morning, and the atmosphere is quite relaxed. They're not expecting the voting to take place until later on today on the dissolution bill. What will be key today will be the negotiations. It's going to be real discussions on which legislation will be able to pass before the dissolution bill later today. So, for example, we already know that a bill that had been proposed saying that if you've been indicted, then you can't form a government and be prime minister, which would, of course, have impacted former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. That is not going to progress. But other key legislation is potentially being used as bargaining chips. So, for example, there are two bills today that are seen as crucial for allowing the US waiver program to continue. And Likud have said that they're not going to vote for that. And that is presumably because they don't want to give the coalition what would be seen as a major win before the election. And even unusually, the US ambassador has actually weighed in on that, urging the parliamentarians to put Israelis first, as he says. Another bill that could be under threat is a bill for the metro system, which is Israel's most ambitious public transport project to date. And again, Likud is saying that they could vote against that. And the key issue is, when will the election take place? Now, the opposition, that's Likud and the religious parties, they'd like to see it on October the 25th. And that's because that's during the Jewish holiday vacations, when their ultra-Orthodox students are going to be at home near the polling stations, more likely to be able to vote. The coalition, on the other hand, would like to see the election on the 1st of November, which is after the holidays. So what we know so far is that the dissolution bill's first reading passed. The plenum are going to be debating it later this afternoon, or even possibly this evening. We've got up until midnight tonight. The bill is expected to then pass. And then Yair Lapid is expected to become the interim prime minister until a new government is formed.
Right. Jody, how is the government dealing with elections which are now certain amidst the key challenges on the domestic front, like Hamas, and internationally with Iran?
Absolutely. So, of course, those things can't stop. So we saw only yesterday that Hamas released footage of Hisham al-Said, a Bedouin Israeli who suffers from mental illness, who actually crossed into Gaza and was taken captive in 2015. And his health is said to be deteriorating, and Hamas are looking to do some sort of prisoner exchange, but that would be involving prisoners who are on the Palestinian side who are there because they have murdered Israelis. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, there's Iran. We know that the indirect nuclear talks are resuming between Iran and the US. And while reports say that some senior intelligence officials are keen to go back to the nuclear deal as the best of two bad options and to buy more time, we know that the IDF chief and the Mossad are strongly opposed to a return to that deal. We've also got the West Asia Defense Alliance, which is growing. Again, there was a report yesterday saying that Israel is thinking about sharing its laser technology with Saudi Arabia, which is surprising because Saudi Arabia doesn't yet recognize Israel. So on the diplomatic front, domestically, as you say, with the Palestinians, things are still continuing. It has to be business as usual, even though things are up in the air in terms of the government and the elections here.
Right, Jodie, thank you very much for bringing us all the latest coming out of the Knesset.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.